So I kind of fell off the map with making videos. I'm super duper sorry about that. College just got kind of hectic, and then Ireland was in lockdowns a bunch. There were so many videos I wanted to make. I wanted to keep making reviews on The Boys. I wanted to make videos on The Mandalorian, make videos on Star Trek Discovery, but I just never really found the opportunity to. Um, this might be the last video I make for the year. I felt like I couldn't not make another video for the rest of the year. It would have been weird if just from September to December I made nothing. But in January, I'm going to try and keep up with the Marvel Disney Plus shows and then with the DCCW shows. Uh, Probably not weekly because I remember it was kind of hard to do weekly videos on Flash and Legends and all of that because they were good. But there's when you're doing weekly videos on them, it's kind of hard to find something to talk about with those shows each week because there's so many filler episodes in their seasons. Superman and Lois with the shorter season is something I would really like to make videos on pretty much weekly, so I might try and do that. Um, but yeah, saw Wonder Woman last week. Came out here on December 16th. I saw it opening day, and it was, well, I guess I won't say because you'll see where it ranks on the list. But yeah, I know that my opinion on a lot of the DCEU movies is pretty controversial, especially some of the ones that I have at the top. I know are ones that a lot of people hate. But I rewatched all of the DCEU movies just before Wonder Woman 84, and I realized that there's actually none of the movies that I hate. Even Suicide Squad, which I remember I've seen it like 5 or 6 times now, and I feel like this was the first time I watched it where I didn't hate it, and I actually found some stuff in it I really enjoyed. But yeah, so in ninth place is the movie that I feel like most people have at very last, and that's Suicide Squad. But yeah, like I said, I didn't actually hate it this time. I felt that there's a lot of stuff in there that is kind of good. It's definitely fallen to a so bad it's good kind of movie, especially even a lot of the dialogue that like the first time I watched it I would have absolutely hated the dialogue, like especially like when Rick Flag introduces Katana. It's just absolutely crazy what he says, and it is bad dialogue, it's bad writing, but because it's been memed so much, I can't help but laugh at it. It kind of feels like, I guess, the Star Wars prequels now, where the dialogue in them, everybody knows the dialogue in them is pretty bad, but it's been talked about and laughed at so much that everybody kind of just likes it now because it really does make you laugh. And that's kind of what Suicide Squad is for me now. It's that movie that, while I can acknowledge that it's not good, there's a lot in there that I still can really kind of like and laugh at. Feel like the score, the soundtrack is really, really good. Definitely one of the highlights. Might actually honestly have one of the best main themes in the DCEU. Even the music they use over like certain stuff, like the actual lyric songs, they're pretty good always as well. Obviously, Will Smith and Margot Robbie as Deadshot and Harley Quinn are perfect in their roles. Margot Robbie has hands down become the iconic version of Harley Quinn, or the version of Harley Quinn that everyone recognizes now. She's pretty much the only proper live action version of Harley we've had, but she's the one that no matter what comes next, she's going to be the most iconic version of the character. I feel like for a long time she's going to be the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, or the Adam West version of Batman, just the one that everybody kind of thinks of as soon as you think of those characters. Jai Courtney was pretty good as Captain Boomerang. The Flash cameo was great. There was a lot of just little elements in here that really worked, but then there was obviously a lot of stuff that wasn't good as well. Like, the fact that it's edited like it's a trailer really doesn't help the film. It does make the pacing be a bit of a huge problem, and like I said, even though the dialogue makes you laugh, even though it's not supposed to be funny, but it makes you laugh, it's still pretty bad dialogue. Jared Leto isn't the worst as the Joker. I feel like he definitely makes you scared of him. He makes you unsettled in a way that none of the other Jokers did. Like, he's the one version of the Joker that I feel like you never know what he's going to do. He's a complete wild card, and that is definitely something good about it, but he doesn't really fit with this style of movie. He's the one character that I kind of feel like I can't see him matching with any of the other characters. I can't even see Jared Leto's Joker working well with Margot Robbie's Harley. It's weird. It's kind of hard to explain, but I feel like he'd be good in a different interpretation of the DC universe. Definitely not this version though. Yeah, there's so much kind of random stuff in here. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But I think it's by far the worst DCEU movie. But like I said, it's one that I feel like has aged pretty well. In 8th place, I have Aquaman, which I don't know if this one's controversial. I know this movie's well liked enough, and I don't hate it. I like some of the stuff in there. I think it's definitely the one DCEU movie that I would say has too many boring moments in it or too many boring elements to it. Like, it's never bad except for, I guess, the Pitbull version of Africa. That was bad. But other than that, there's nothing in this film that I would say is bad. It just has a lot of moments that slow down and don't really work. They just kind of make you feel a little bit bored, a little bit, you're not interested in what's going on. Um, this is a weird movie for me because I remember liking it the first time I saw it. Then after like immediately seeing it, I just kept thinking of it like I don't want to go back and visit this. I don't think I'd like this on a second watch, and because of that, my memory of the movie has gotten pretty deteriorated. It's got me into a mindset where I feel like I don't want to watch this movie. I know I'm not gonna like it. And then I rewatched it and I was like, you know what, that isn't as bad as I remember, but I definitely still have a lot of the same feelings that I did have. Like, honestly, I guess a lot of the problems I have with the movie stem from Atlantis. I feel like the way that they decided to do the Atlantean politics, the way they decided to go into Ocean Master and all that sort of stuff, wasn't in the most interesting way. I feel like James Wan more concentrated on the spectacle and how Atlantis looked, how Atlantis felt, rather than how well the characters were written and how well the characters made you interested in them. Like, for example, Black Manta was one of the standout characters of the film for me, but he wasn't even an Atlantean at all. He didn't have anything to do with Atlantis other than he wanted to kill Aquaman. Mera's fine. I guess the whole thing with Amber Heard kind of has tainted my interpretation of her. I was pretty fine on her up until all that stuff happened. Now I'm like, I just don't really like her character. I feel like the last 20 minutes or so is by far the best part of the film. I feel like that's when Jason Momoa really falls into an Aquaman I want to see more of, because up until that point he really is just kind of the weird stunt man Aquaman, I guess. He doesn't really have much of a character to him other than he just wants to do crazy stuff just because he feels like it. It's in the final 20 minutes of the film where he really starts to become that king, badass Aquaman with the costume and everything, the one that I remember from the comics, the one that I remember from the Justice League animated series that I really, really like. And that's why I'm actually excited for Aquaman 2, is because I feel like we're finally going to get that interpretation of Aquaman that both Justice League and Aquaman the movie didn't really give me much of. Plus the fight scenes in this are great. Like, any fight scene between Orm and Arthur is great. Any fight scene involving the Tridents is great. I feel like the training scenes where Vulko is training Arthur are all great. It's just a lot of kind of middle-ish stuff with, I don't know, when Orm and the King, that I'm completely forgetting his name at the moment, but Orm and the King towards the start of it are just talking about the politics and about the different cultures in Atlantis. I wasn't really into that. I felt that there could have been a much more interesting the way they could have put all that across. Plus, I'm just not interested in big, huge monsters. It's the reason why I'm not really into Godzilla or King Kong or anything like that. And a lot of the stuff in this film did really be like, oh wow, look at this big ocean monster we're about to see. Isn't that crazy? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I'm not really interested in that though. And I guess that's where I'm not going to be interested in James Wan's The Trench either, if that's even still being made, because The Trench really does just seem like it's just going to be how they became big monsters, and that doesn't interest me at all. But yeah, it does have a lot of good elements into it. It's still an enjoyable movie. I feel like it could have been shorter, and there's a couple stuff in there that could have been portrayed in a better way. In seventh place, I have Justice League, the theatrical 2017 version, and this one is kind of a weird one because technically this isn't even a DCEU movie anymore, I don't think, because I know that Patty Jenkins and maybe James Wan, I know Patty Jenkins definitely said it, who's director of Wonder Woman, but she was like, yeah, Wonder Woman 84 and the original Wonder Woman, when I went into those, I didn't pay attention to the theatrical cut of Justice League at all. That version of Justice League isn't canon to my films. And I think James Wan said the same about Aquaman, where he was like, yeah, that version of Justice League is not canon to what I'm doing with Aquaman. It's the Snyder cut version that's canon. So if that's the case, if all the directors just go with the assumption that the Snyder cut version of Justice League is the canon version, then that would mean that the theatrical version is basically just an Elseworld story that has a lot of elements from the DCEU, whereas the Snyder Cut version is the one where should actually be getting ranked. But even when Snyder Cut comes out and I'm like still doing stuff like this, I'm probably still going to keep the Snyder Cut version of the film and the theatrical cut both in these rankings, just because it's kind of is whatever you think is canon, I suppose. But yeah, it's a movie that I don't hate. I think it's a very middle of the road film that some of the hate it gets is deserved, but a lot of the overwhelming, this is the worst comic book movie I've ever seen, doesn't really add up to me. I think that there's a lot of stuff in there that still is very enjoyable. I think that their portrayal of Henry Cavill's, or the way that Henry Cavill portrays Superman in this movie as a very kind of upbeat, cheery, very Christopher Reeve style character is something I really enjoy. I like how towards the end of the movie, the Justice League are basically losing the fight until Superman comes in and is like, all right, I'm here now. We're about to finish this. That's great. The fight scene where Superman is taking on Aquaman, Cyborg, and Wonder Woman, and then Flash starts running around him, and Superman stops to look at Flash, and that's when Barry's like, oh wow, he can see me. That is an amazing scene. It's one of the most memorable scenes in a superhero film for me. There's a lot of stuff in there, like lines that people hate because Whedon put them in, and I think one of the lines that Whedon put in was where Superman says, "Do you bleed?" to Batman. That was great. I was like, that's such an amazing callback, and it shows that Superman really is kind of angry now. He doesn't have his soul back or anything like that. That was really good. I like that. I felt that the soundtrack or the score wasn't good at all. That was Danny Elfman basically just took his version of the Batman theme from the 1989 movie, and he put it into every single bit of the music. I think he used the Wonder Woman Hans Zimmer theme once, and he used the John Williams Superman theme once, and he might have used the Hans Zimmer Superman or Man of Steel theme once as well, but he used all of those once at different points. He never used them to their full potential, and other than that, it was just constantly his Batman theme put everywhere. He didn't even bring back the Batman theme from Batman v Superman once, which in my opinion is the far superior Batman theme. But that was kind of annoying. I felt like a lot of moments in the movie that could have been better were let down because of the score. Steppenwolf was a terrible villain. I would say he's probably the worst villain we've had out of the 9 DCEU movies yet. Well, I mean, not even probably. It's kind of undeniable that he is. There's just pretty much no redeeming traits to him. He has no characterization. He's just a villain because he's a villain. The bit where they went to Themyscira was also pretty bad. I know that was one of the reasons Patty Jenkins said that she doesn't consider this movie canon, is because the way that this movie portrayed Themyscira and portrayed the Amazonians and Hippolyta and all that was something that she was not a fan of, and that it did not line up with her characterizations of them at all. So, like, I completely agree with that. I think that the way they were done in this was terrible. Also, the way they were just standing around with a weird CGI screen, it was bad. And that's another problem with it. The CGI in this film looks like it's from, I would say, the mid-2000s. It looks nowhere near the standard of a 2017 film, which obviously is because of the constant behind-the-scenes drama and how they didn't have enough time to finish it and all that sort of stuff. I'm also not a fan of Ezra Miller's Barry. I think, I guess his movie might kind of bring him back a little bit for me, but even in what we've seen of him in Batman v Superman, in this, and even, I guess, in what we saw of him in Crisis on Infinite Earths, I just can't see him as a Barry Allen I'm going to be able to take seriously. So I hope that the Flash movie does kind of bring a seriousness to his character that also kind of goes with the levity of him. I guess Suicide Squad is the one time that I was like, I like this character, but even then, that was a tiny 1-second cameo, and it doesn't really kind of count. But yeah, there's some stuff in here that's good, there's some stuff that's not. I think Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is fine. There isn't really much to commend or say that was bad about it. She, like, obviously this is her weakest film of the four, but she didn't really get a lot to do even. Jason Momoa, this is what set him up as Aquaman, and I guess this is what set up his characterization in the film of Aquaman, so I'm not a big fan of that. Ben Affleck's Batman is also unfortunately not great in this film. He doesn't feel like Bruce Wayne because he just lets the other characters walk over him quite a bit, and that's frustrating. That's not what Bruce should be. In sixth place, I have Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. So this is a film that I think is good. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's good. And the stuff that's good about it is Black Canary, is Huntress, is Ewan McGregor's Black Mask. Love is good. I think that the visual style of the movie is pretty great. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the problems, in my opinion, fall on the fact that it's much more of a Harley Quinn movie than it is a Birds of Prey movie, and it's also just completely all over the place. I feel like the way that they chose to do the film in a way that, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I guess when they were doing the continuity of the film, they made it seem like it was coming from Harley's head, which makes it a little bit hard to follow. Like, there's a bit around 30 minutes in where it cuts to a flashback to what happened leading up to this, and that flashback is about 30 minutes long in itself. So then by the time you get back to present day, or the present time, then you're like, oh, I completely forgot I was in a flashback because this was going on so long. That's not good in my opinion. I feel like they should have figured out a way to do that better, or just not have the film come from Harley Quinn's point of view, because she unfortunately was a down point of this film. I thought Margot Robbie portrayed her perfectly, but Harley Quinn is a character, in my opinion, that just needs to be in small doses. I feel like a movie surrounding her just is kind of hard to follow. It gets a little bit annoying a little fast. But yeah, Black Canary, Huntress, an actual Birds of Prey movie would have been something that would have made this phenomenal in my opinion, because they were by far the best part of the film, along with Black Mask, which actually, Ewan McGregor's Black Mask is probably one of the best DCEU villains. I thought he was perfect. I thought even Victor Zsasz was pretty good. Renee Montoya, I don't really have an opinion on her. I thought she was fine. Cassandra Cain, I also wasn't crazy about, honestly. She was kind of fine for me. But I don't really have too much to say in this film. I thought it was good. Just some stuff there could have improved it and made it great. In fifth place is Wonder Woman. So now we're getting into the movies that I do think are great. From Here to the End is either a movie I think is great or is phenomenal, and Wonder Woman is definitely great. It was a film that I felt like really took advantage of the era they were placing it in. I even felt like the fact that Batman v Superman set this film up by having the picture of Chris Pine and Gal Gadot and all that sort of stuff. Also, I just want to say, I'm really sorry. I don't know where it's pronounced Gal Gadot or Gal Gadot, so I realize I just said it both ways. But I've never realized which version of her name is pronounced that way. So please correct me on what it actually is. But yeah, I thought that they really took advantage of the era the film is set in. I thought that the war stuff was great. The No Man's Land scene is one of the most iconic scenes in a comic book movie at this point. The music in this is phenomenal. The fact that the composer of this, which I think is Rupert Gregerson Williams, or it's something close to that, but the way he created his own main theme for the movie, he created his own main theme for Wonder Woman while still using the Hans Zimmer Wonder Woman theme when necessary, was genius, honestly. So many composers, when they come into movies like this, they'll just kind of forget what came before and they'll just use what they're familiar with, what they know. That's what Danny Elfman did with Justice League. That's what a lot of the Marvel composers do when they come into big team-up movies or movies with ensembles. Like, I think Iron Man technically has had 3 main themes because he had 3 different composers for each of his movies, and none of those composers took advantage of the prior themes. But this movie is completely different to that. He takes advantage of the prior themes and still uses his own. So he puts his own spin on it, he puts his own style on it, and it really adds to the film. Chris Pine as Steve Trevor is great. I thought that Gal, she portrayed Wonder Woman in a very good way. I think the fish out of water stuff in London is great. I love the scene where it's like an homage to Superman the movie, where she protects Chris by like banging the bullet, which was an homage to, obviously, Christopher Reeve's Superman, who was protecting Margot Kidder's Lois Lane with the bullet. But I feel like Gal and Chris play off each other very well. I love how slowly over the movie Diana and Steve gain more of an appreciation to each other, to the fact where they are in love by the end of the movie. And Steve has one of the best exits in a comic book movie as well, I feel, where he's like, I can save the day, you can save the world. That's a great scene. The third act is definitely not in tone with what came before, but I still don't think it's bad. I think that a lot of it's good. I feel like, yeah, the CGI could have been a little bit better, but I think Ares was a good villain. I think that a fight like that really added to the stakes. I also thought the way they did Themyscira in this film was great. They really gave a personality to the Amazonians in a way that pretty much, I actually haven't seen the Linda Carter stuff, so I'm not sure how they portray the Amazonians, but I was a huge fan of what they did here in this with them. I thought all of that was good. I guess one problem I would have with this film, and this also was a problem I have with Wonder Woman 84, is that it doesn't really match up with what Batman v Superman said about Diana decided to walk away from the world, because at the end of this film, she stopped the war. So it doesn't really make sense that she would have decided, oh, well, Ares pretty much corrupted man, I have to walk away from the world now. And obviously she didn't walk away from the world, because Wonder Woman 84 shows that she's still very much around in present day in 84. So it just feels like it doesn't really line up with what Batman v Superman put there, but I'm fine with it. It's not a big problem. It's just a little something that I always think about when I rewatch the movie. And in fourth place is Man of Steel, which is the first film in the franchise. One of the reasons why I'm a big fan of this movie is because it's the first Superman film that feels realistic. Like, obviously it isn't realistic, because literally the third act is aliens completely destroying a city. And obviously Superman himself is not realistic, but I just feel like the tone of the film and the way that they manage it is something where I feel like if Superman did exist, if aliens did exist, this is probably how it would go, which I was a huge fan of. I thought that was a really unique way to go. I also was kind of really like into how they portrayed Krypton in this film. I think this is the only time that Krypton has been portrayed as a very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a very kind of fantasy Lord of the Rings-esque world. Because before this, it's always kind of been either just very technologically advanced, which is the way Supergirl or the way the comics kind of a lot of the time approach it, or the very kind of snowy landscape, which is how Superman the movie approached it and how Smallville approaches it and all that. So I was really kind of into this new unique one where there's just kind of animals, huge things that you would see in kind of a Lord of the Rings-esque movie here. Plus, it very much showed how different Krypton was to Earth, because yes, even though we always see Krypton as technology advanced or is full of snow, it still looks like something that could conceivably be Earth someday. Krypton here was something where I was like, wow, that's completely alien. I've never seen something like that. On top of that, I really did like how Superman in this film, you could feel the weight of his punches. You could feel the weight of his battle with Zod, because a lot of times something that they don't get right with the character, they don't get right with the superhero battles, is that they don't feel weighty to them. It doesn't feel like, these are huge gods battling in the middle of a city. It just feels like, oh, they're getting thrown into a wall or something, there's a little dent in the wall. This really felt like what would happen if gods were fighting. There would be cataclysmic, huge destruction everywhere. Entire buildings would topple just by one person getting gently pushed into one. So I was really into that. Also, Michael Shannon Zod was a great villain. I absolutely loved his dialogue with Clark, with Jor at the start of the film. I thought it was all great. He might be my favourite interpretation of the character. I know Smallville Season 9's version, which I'm completely forgetting the actor's name, but Smallville did do a really good version of Zod in Season 9, but I still think this is my favourite version, just because Michael Shannon Zod was legitimately scary. Like, when he's yelling at Clark, or when he's yelling at the Kryptonian cats about how he's going to find Clark, how he's going to find Laura's son, that is all amazing. Plus, I felt that like sometimes he was even somewhat making sense. The way he's talking about terraforming Earth and the way that they can, they can rebuild Krypton from the ashes of Earth and all that. It just looked really, really cool. It sounded really, really cool. The soundtrack, obviously, cannot mention Hans Zimmer's amazing score here, which is probably my favorite comic book movie soundtrack of all time. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Amy Adams' Lois Lane is great. There's just so much elements here that work really, really well. I feel like it didn't reach its full potential. There are some stuff or some moments that I think could have been a little better. I think that a lot like how my problem with Birds of Prey, where continuity wise it doesn't really work too well, I feel like the same is true for here. I think the movie could have done a little bit better, or could have been a little bit easier to follow with more of a linear kind of timeline, because pretty much throughout the entire movie we're jumping back and forth to Clark's past, to something else that happened in his past. We're jumping from Lois Lane traveling around the world to Clark traveling around the world. It's all something that kind of consistently makes you need to readjust yourself when you switch to a different time of day or point of view or something like that. That's something that I feel like should be changed a little bit. I also loved how this movie really did set up a DC extended universe without hitting you over the head with it. There's a Wayne satellite up there. There's LexCorp trucks driving around. There's Martian Manhunter in the movie. We don't know he's Martian Manhunter. There's little hints that maybe Aquaman saved Clark. A lot of cool stuff like that. That it goes much more of a nuanced, realistic approach where you can tell this world is full of other characters out there, rather than being like, oh, look, here's Aquaman, here's Martian Manhunter, they're in this movie, look at them, they're right there, you can see them, kind of thing. So I was really a big fan of that. In third place is Wonder Woman 1984, which is the newest film, and honestly, I was pretty blown away with this film. I was so surprised how much I enjoyed it. I was expecting to like it, but I was still probably thinking this would be a little bit less good than the first Wonder Woman, maybe a bit more than Birds of Prey, so kind of like in between those two films. I wasn't expecting to just be completely blown away by it. There was so much stuff here. At the start of the movie, I was also I should say no spoilers, because I know that in the US especially, this doesn't come out until Christmas Day exactly, so promise no spoilers. But there's some stuff that like I felt was being paced weirdly, and was paced in a way I didn't like, but then I kind of realized that was the point. The beginning of it was very much supposed to resemble a cheesy 1980s movie, and once I got into that mindset, it all kind of worked out. But then the tones in each act change as well. Like Act 2 completely changes from Act 1, Act 3 is completely different from all three of them, and I felt like each act worked into itself, that you don't realize you're changing gears, you're changing tones until they've already happened, and I feel like that was very good. The way they brought back Chris Pine and Steve Trevor was perfect. It didn't feel forced. Didn't feel like they were just trying to keep Steve Trevor around. I was happy with that. Kristen Wiig's Cheetah was great. I'm not a huge fan of how the actual Cheetah villain costume looks. That looks kind of weird. But her interpretation of Barbara Minerva is great. She's pretty much the only person I can see as a live action version of the character now. Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord is up there as one of the best DC villains. Like, I'd put him up there with Black Mask and with Zod. Anne Gal was obviously absolutely perfect as Wonder Woman. I really liked how they kind of reversed the roles this time from the first movie, where instead of Diana being the fish out of water this time, it's Steve being the fish out of water, and they're kind of playing off each other. I felt that was a really good reversal, a really good way to kind of call back and homage the original film. But you can really tell that, you know, time has passed for Gal, that she's a very different person she was to in the first film. I like that. She does feel like she's much closer this time to her character in Batman v Superman. And the fight scenes are amazing. The score is amazing. There's just so much about this movie that I was so into. But I don't want to spoil too much of it, so I'm not going to talk any more about it. But in second place is Shazam. And this is another film that I was expecting to like because, you know, Shazam, Captain Marvel, is a great character. But I was absolutely floored by this film when I saw it. I was so surprised how many jokes, for example, in the film weren't just spoiled in the trailer, because with a lot of films that very much rely on comedy, most of the jokes they spoil in the trailer, so you don't really get any huge laugh out loud moments when you're going to see them in the cinema. That was not the case with Shazam. There were so many jokes that they completely saved for the actual movie, and that really did enhance my experience of it. I know that should just say that I stopped watching trailers, and you're completely right, I should just stop watching trailers, but I can't help myself. When a trailer for a DC or Marvel thing comes out, I gotta watch it. But Zachary Levi is great as Billy. I forget the younger actors' names for Billy and Freddy, but they were both amazing in their characters as well. I feel like Zachary Levi's Billy Batson and the young version of Freddy really played off each other very well, and Zachary Levi just did such a great job of making this still feel like Billy Batson. Like, it would be so easy to kind of make it seem like the younger Billy and the Shazam Billy are two completely different characters when they grow up and change and all that. But no, you can really tell that these are the same characters, that they're just grown up now, which I really did appreciate. Also, they did an excellent job at casting the Marvel family, or the Shazam family, I guess they're called now. I felt that it felt like they were all their younger characters. I felt like that, you know, even the dialogue, it felt like they were all the same characters, which was great. The costumes were amazing, some of the best in the comic industry. I actually forgot to mention as well that the Aquaman costumes are a huge highlight of that movie. But yeah, just everything about this film was so good to me. Savannah is a villain who, while I was having a problem with the first few times I watched it, he's someone who's grown on me. I like how evil he is. I like how he is over the top. I like how he does feel legitimately threatening. It would have been way too easy to make him just kind of a caricature and not actually that scary, but I felt that he was. I felt that he really played, and Mark Strong played him really well. Just like in Man of Steel, I felt that they did a good job of making the battles feel weight, that making them feel like these are two gods fighting. But yeah, overall I just was completely blown away by this film. There's not a lot more praise I can give it. And in first place, and probably the most controversial pick on this list, is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, as I know I'm one of the 20 people on the entire planet who loves this movie, this is actually my second favorite film of all time. I think everything about this is perfect. I've always thought Batman is a pretty overrated character, and up until this point my favorite version of Batman was the comic book version of Batman, because I just hate how in live action it's always, oh, he wins this because he's Batman, or he's cool because he's Batman. In this, Ben Affleck was the version of Batman that made me change my tune on live action Batman, or I felt that he was the absolute perfect embodiment of both Bruce and Batman. It perfectly worked for me that he was a Batman who's been at this 20 years, and he's just fucking sick to the insides of all the villains, of the constant fighting and now he's just fed up so much that he's just going to start killing people. I thought that actually fit with this version of the character. I know that's a huge controversial topic that I'm poking with a bear there, talking about Batman killing, because that's the one thing that everybody hates about this film. And while, yeah, I think maybe they could have done something different with that, they maybe could have found a way to have Bruce not be a killer, I still think it works in terms of this character. I think that pretty much all the dialogue is perfect between Bruce and Clark. It feels very, very, very well written. It feels like you're reading a comic book, honestly, when you're hearing the dialogue between a lot of these characters. My one problem is Jesse Eisenberg doesn't feel like Lex Luthor. I know he's technically Lex Luthor's son, but he doesn't feel like the character to me. Doomsday shouldn't have been in this film. That was really stupid. The whole film should have just been Lex manipulating Batman and Superman to fight. There should have been no Doomsday. Once Superman and Batman decided to settle their differences, they should have just picked up Lex, dropped him in Arkham. That should have been the film. Wonder Woman obviously being introduced in this film, I was fine with that because, you know, it gave us Gal, it gave us a little bit of an introduction to Diana before her movie, so I was completely fine with that. But the whole Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg cameo things, they shouldn't have been in it. That was also a bit too much. Like, where Man of Steel mastered the setting up the universe, adding little sprinkles here or there, Batman v Superman failed in that matter, I felt like. But other than that, there's just, I don't know what to say. I just absolutely love this movie. I adore it. There isn't a lot of comic book movies, there isn't a lot of films in general that have made me feel how this film felt on the first watch, where I just came out of it and immediately wanted to buy a ticket and watch it again. So yeah, but that is how I'd rank all 9 of the DCEU films up until this point. What's your ranking? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And a lot of people probably do, because yeah, Batman v Superman at 1 is probably a very controversial pick. But wow, this was a long video. Yeah, I like talking about this stuff. But yeah, I'm going to try and make another video before the end of the year. Maybe like my top 20 shows of the year, my top 20 movies of the year, or what I'm most anticipated to see in 2021. And then I'll definitely try and get back to some kind of regular pattern for January and all of that sort of stuff. But if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and all that. Maybe we can hit 500 soon, which would be amazing. And I hope you have an amazing day and an amazing Christmas.